the major leagues. His years-long story of grit, determination, injuries, heartache, and triumphs in pursuit of his dreams is inspiring. A curveball that he didn't count on was reconnecting with an old Armijo flame, Kim McCrickard, a class of 1986 grad. They have been sliding into home together now for 21 years. And since I'm fresh out of baseball metaphors, please join me in welcoming Huck Flener into the Armijo High School Hall of Fame.
So Tony mentioned surreal, getting the call to the major leagues a long time ago. To me, this is kind of surreal because growing up 8 blocks away from right here, we played hide and go seek downtown. I can tell you which banks had the best water coolers. I can tell you which ones would kick you out if you tried to steal the free cookies. You mentioned sneaking into high school football games when I was 6, 7 years old. I wanted to be Armijo. These guys were heroes to me. So hearing the coaches, Coach Cortez, Coach Fuller, Coach Dahl's here. I'm glad Tony stole half his material because that's the least Coach Dahl's ever talked. I appreciate it. There's a couple things I was thinking about what I would want to share today. And growing up in Fairfield, it's been mentioned about how it's a small town, it's growing and stuff. But one thing that I've always taken from growing up here was the blessing of the diversity of the makeup of the people in the community. And growing up, I thought that was just how it was. And then I went to Southern California for school and realized that was a whole different animal down there. And then as I traveled and played and lived in all parts of the United States and even other parts of the world, I realized that really was not how it was the rest of the world. And that was kind of a letdown, honestly. So yeah, I think that speaks to our community here, and I think we all take pride in that. That experience, that shared experience is something that we take away from here. It's truly special. The other thing I wanted to say was, obviously I married an Armijo Indian, so that was cool. I used to be a ball boy for Tony's basketball teams. Is to the educators that are in the room and those who aren't here, it matters when you can empower someone to achieve something they didn't think they could do before. I think like most kids, oh, I want to play in the major leagues, or oh, I want to play in the NFL or something. The Martin brothers were ahead of my time, but the fact that they came from here and they did it, that was kind of cool. And those are, Mount Rushmore people in my mind growing up around here. But, Coach Marshall, who I haven't seen yet here today, but I know he's getting inducted, and that's really cool that I get to do it the same day he did. He said something to me that, when I was a freshman, he said, I think you could be pretty good. And, what is your plan? And Tony shared the story about Cal State Fullerton, and he kind of chuckled. And strangely enough, it ended up being as I did make it there. But he was, someone who had credibility in a certain field. He had played professional baseball himself, and he saw something in me that was a little bit different. And, before that, it had just been something that I, like any other kid, had dreamed of. But that was the first time that I believed I could do it. And, what they say, you believe it, you can achieve it kind of thing. I know it's kind of a trite saying, but when someone who has credibility believes in you and says, I think you could do this with a little bit of hard work, it kind of felt like, wow, that's going to happen. And I think all of us, whether it's baseball or some other sport or an interest, that if we have a chance to affect young people in that way, it makes a difference. So don't forget that. Thank you to those who affected me that way, Coach Dahl and the other coaches. But keep that in mind, all you educators out there. It makes a big difference. Thank you.
Judge Ramona Garrett. Now, I love Judge Garrett's story because it sounds like one of those based on a true story, triumph over adversity movies that I'm always a sucker for. By her own admission, Garrett never committed 100% to her studies at Armijo, and as a sophomore, she discovered boys. And that became her preoccupation. In January 1970, her senior year, Garrett was pregnant, and Armijo's policy was that expecting students had to leave when they began to show. She still had enough credits to graduate, but didn't walk with her class as her daughter was born the day after the June ceremony. Garrett began attending Santa Clara University 3 months after giving birth, and while she eventually graduated with a degree in philosophy, it wasn't easy being 18 years old on welfare with a baby at a wealthy school. She had to figure out how to be a grown-up and deal with adversity and solve problems with very little assistance. After working at a string of jobs that included folding towels at Emporium Catwell and working at store cable TV, eventually Garrett enrolled at the University of California Davis School of Law, from which he graduated in 1980. Garrett began working at the Solano County District Attorney's Office on July 5th, 1984. About the third week she was there, she had a burglary case and met the investigating officer who she'd be working with, named Officer Arthur Koch. After the trial, they shook hands and he went on his way. Within a couple of days, Art Koch was the first Fairfield police officer killed in the line of duty when a suspect named Stanley Verkettis shot him. After a hung jury in the first trial, at the second, Garrett secured a victory as Verkettis was found guilty of first-degree murder with special circumstances and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And he died in 2017. Garrett then became Chief Deputy District Attorney, and 6 years later, on January 28, 1992, she became the first woman and the first African-American appointed as a Solano County judge when Governor Pete Wilson appointed her to the Solano County Municipal Court bench. One of her notable accomplishments was establishing the Solano County Adult Drug Court, focusing on treatment instead of punishment. In 2008 and 2009, she was the presiding judge of Solano County Superior Court. After 23 years on the bench, Garrett retired in 2015. Last year, the Solano County Bar Association awarded her the first Legal Trailblazers Award, and today, I have the honor of inducting the Honorable Judge Ramona Garrett into the Armijo High School Hall of Fame.
Okay, my name is Regina Williams, and I'm Ramona's Ride or Die crew girl. And I'm speaking on her behalf today. Her mother passed away on Thursday, so she's not able to be here. But one of the things I'm just going to say briefly is that a lot of people say, you know, Ramona Garrett, the first African-American, the first female judge. But the thing that she was most proud of, and people fail to see this, is that she was an Armijo graduate. That's what she wants people to say, because she loved Armijo, and it's because of Armijo that she was able to become a judge. And so, as we remember as the first female judge, the first black judge, always remember that, first of all, she was an Armijo Indian and will always be an Armijo Indian.
Michael Green. Our third Pizzerino Boy inductee is Michael Green from the class of 1957, where in the senior superlative section of the yearbook, he was voted best dressed. Green had a number of interests in high school, including sports like basketball, football, and track, as well as singing with the choir, but his true passion was always art. His senior year, he captured the members of the Pizzerino Boys in caricature in a drawing that showed them hanging out on the steps of Armijo Union High School back when it was located on Union Avenue. After graduating from Armijo, Green majored in art in college and went to the Art Center in Los Angeles. And he was a freelance artist for a number of years. Green made ends meet by teaching art at the Fairfield Recreation Department, in the school system, and to adults. He also taught privately and supplemented his income by selling paintings as well. Now they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and so right now, I'm gonna shut up and give you 5,000 words worth of Michael's works.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible? Now, while his work was shown at the De Young Museum in San Francisco, the Legion of Honor in both San Francisco and Los Angeles, as well as the National Academy of Design in New York, locally, his most well-known artwork is this guy. It started out as just a doodle of his friend and fellow Pizzerino boy Pete Andronis as an Indian, but took on a life of his own. And knockoffs were actually used as the official Indian guides at the school. Now, Green was ecstatic when he got his first regular job with a paycheck and benefits working as an illustrator for the Port of Oakland in 1970. The Port of Oakland was and is an autonomous branch of the city of Oakland and owned the airport, the shipping terminals, Jack London Square, and more. He did architectural renderings of projects, portraits, promotional literature, illustrations for the Chamber of Commerce, and loved his job there. After 13 years, Green was recruited by the design directors and owners of the Nut Tree, and a commute to Vacaville beat one to Oakland. Eventually, Green became design director, and his fondest memories are the annual Scarecrow contest that began in 1979. After working in the Nut Tree for about 10 years, a series of unfortunate events happened, and it closed abruptly. He was 53 years old, had no computer skills, and was out of a job. That's when he applied to be the manager of the Dixon Mayfair. At that time, 1993, the Dixon Mayfair, California's oldest continuous fair, was nearly bankrupt. Green's solution? Big name concerts. A partial list of the acts that Green and his team brought to the fair, which raised both its profile and profits, includes the Doobie Brothers, Kansas, REO Speedwagon, Clint Black, Trisha Yearwood, Winona, Eddie Money, Joan Jett, Huey Lewis and the News, Sammy Hagar, and Willie Nelson. The shows were a success, yes. The shows were a success. They put Dixon on the map, and they created fond memories for many fairgoers. When Green retired in 2007, he was touted in newspaper articles as being the focused, creative force that saved the Dixon Mayfair from a near certain demise. His plan had been for the fair to do $1 million in 4 days, and in its final year, they did it. Please join me in welcoming a creative force for good, Michael Green, into the Armijo High School Hall. And to accept the award for him is Gary Drummond.
I'm back. This time on behalf of Mike Green, who unfortunately last night developed first a sore throat and then a fever, which got worse all night long, keeping him up all night, and this morning he was no better, if nothing else, he was worse. So he had forwarded to me, he asked me to speak on his behalf, and he forwarded to me his notes. So I want you to keep in mind, if you would please, that this is all in the first person singular, but they're not my words, they're Michael's words. I have given a lot of thought to what I want to say and to whom I want to credit with creating the path that led me here today. First, there is my father, who was an auto wrecker and a member of the Vallejo Artist League. An interesting combination. I traveled with him to bid on wrecked cars one day and to the De Young and Legion of Honor museums on another. I took it all in stride, understanding that somehow these two different worlds were not incompatible. Just one was work and the other was not. I chose the one that was not. I began drawing at an early age, and for quite a while I was an admirer of Paula Silva, who drew beautiful horses. But by the age of 10 or so, I realized that I would never draw horses as well as Paula Silva. Luckily, though, I enrolled in Jack Vickers' art class at Vallejo Junior High. Mr. Vickers didn't care if I could draw horses, and he encouraged me not to give up, but to continue drawing and painting, preferably other subjects. And now we quickly come to the beginning of my 4 years as an Armijo Indian. John and Abo and I were in the junior choir, and were encouraged by Mr. Bainbridge, the music director, to find another elective. I chose art. Now, at this point, I would like to depart from Mike's text for just a quick anecdote. As John, who's sitting right over there, and Mike, as said, were in the junior choir. And before one of the concerts, if that's what they're called, a recital, a concert, Mr. Bainbridge took Mike and John to the side, and of course they thought, well, we're going to be asked to do a solo piece. And Mr. Bainbridge asked them both to simply mouth the words. Anyway, to continue with Mike's text. This is at Armijo now. The art teacher, Mary Pedri, gave me my first grade lesson, although I didn't recognize it as such at the time. I was very proud of a sailboat that I had painted as a part of a class project. Mrs. Pedri looked at it, then asked me if I sailed or had actually ever been on a sailboat. The answer was no, whereupon she suggested that I stay with subjects that I understood. I was crushed, but I took her lesson to heart. After high school, I went to Utah State, an agriculture and engineering college not known for its art department. Fortunately for me, art was my minor. That surprised me, actually. Was my minor, and I found myself in small classes taught by 3 very accomplished artist instructors. Harrison Groutich, drawing, printmaking, and ceramics; Ev Faust, painting, and in particular Gail Lindstrom, ceramics and watercolor, who was a very big influence in my career in that medium. The 3 encouraged me to go to the Art Center in Los Angeles to complete my studies, which I did. So with the formal education complete, it was time to start earning a living. As I was primarily an illustrator, the logical place to start was maybe Los Angeles, but probably New York. I did neither. Instead, I began painting in my garage and teaching adult education for our local recreation department and privately. My students were all art, or rather they were all college graduates who had never been taught the basics. But then later I was hired full-time, and big shows and big awards started coming my way. One such honor involved a large painting depicting the tremendous crushing contact on a football line of scrimmage. I painted it in a garage in Logan, Utah, and it won first place at the Utah State Fair. After which I brought it home to my garage in Fairfield. Later I built a shipping crate and sent the painting off to New York. to be submitted in the first Sport in Art exhibit, an invitational sponsored by the National Academy. Much to my surprise, it was accepted for the exhibit, which started at Madison Square Garden and then went on tour. And it was returned to me, and I put it back in my garage. Having won first place ribbon in Salt Lake City and acceptance in an important New York exhibit, I retired the painting from competition and gave it to a good friend of mine who made a career in professional football. It should come as no surprise to any of you that today the painting has taken a place of honor in John Anabo's garage. My father used to say that if we outlast the competition, we may have the last word. Here's my last word, or one of them. I would hate to see the AI folks eliminate arts from public education. Without the visual arts, music, drama, opera, and the three-dimensional works of artists like Phil Glasshoff, the world would be a pretty dull place. So what I want to emphasize is that if it had not been for art programs in public schools, which taught me the basics, I wouldn't be here today. I made my living as an illustrator, so drew and painted what the assignments called for. My best and most personal works, however, were impressions of the places and things I grew up with and are still around me and all of us. The subjects that dominated the paintings that I entered in the big competitions, like the California State Fair and Exposition, were of these places right in our backyard. 2 of these paintings are in the State of California Permanent Collection, and they feature the orchards of the marvelous Green and Suisun valleys. So, Mrs. Pedre, thank you. I took your lesson as a guiding principle. Also, my thanks to the Armijo Alumni Association, and a special salute of gratitude to Tony Wade.
Jim Inglebright. So what's it gonna be? A stable career as a successful owner of a business based in the town you grew up in? Or a race car driver gallivanting around the country and celebrating in the winner's circle several times? Well, if you're Armijo class of 1979 grad Jim Inglebright, the answer is both. Jim Inglebright's automobile education began at his father's wrecking yard, Bob's Auto Parts on Peabody Road, and was augmented by the welding he learned from Armijo industrial arts teacher, Mr. Tyler. Then, just a year after graduation, he launched his first business, Roadrunner Towing, which is still going strong 43 years later. Have you ever heard the phrase, Armijo is for lovers? You may have heard it here. Well, Inglebright and his wife, Valerie, from the Armijo class of 1980, began dating when he was 16 and she was 15, and they have been life and business partners for over 4 decades. When not hard at work, Inglebright was hard at play. He would water ski on the Suisun Slough until dark nightly and race motorcycles every weekend. A number of knee operations and other ailments led him to end his motocross career in his mid-20s, but in 1990 he bought a stock car racing team. He made a name for himself quickly and soon had corporate sponsors like Jelly Belly. Now, Inglebright was always aware that it was not a matter of if a crash would happen, but when. One particular track accident Inglebright was involved in, a 1994 crash at the NASCAR Southwest Tour race at Sonoma Raceway, where his car flipped, is memorialized in a YouTube video.
Laughing got thrown out of the shunt down at turn 11 where Benny Parsons is standing on the final lap. He got booted back out of the top 10, but could have had a top 3 finish. Big crash. One car has flipped and gone heavy headlong into the barrier. Jim Inglebright out of Fairfield, California has hit the barrier up there, and it is heavy impact as the crews now are running up there. That is at turn 6.
That's the entrance to the carousel, and I'll tell you, Jerry, that is a very treacherous place. Very fast, wide open third gear, and you come up over the rise, and what happens is you tend to, if you get in there a little deep, you tend to lock the brakes up, and the wheel hops, and you get off the racetrack.
Jim Inglebright, 32-year-old driver, owns his own towing service. That's the Roadrunner you see on his car, and that Chevrolet Lumina has...
What's that? Look at there.
There he is, climbing out. Oh, that's great to see that. Wave to the crowd, and the point workers are there.
That's unbelievable. It looks like a groundhog coming out front of that car. Man, oh man.
Well, it was certainly good to see him climb out from under there.
As we saw the official there give the signal, bring the wrecker. Bring the wrecker. We got to get this thing turned over and get it out of here.
Boy, the irony, he owns his own towing service, and now he has to have a wrecker here to pick up what's
I'm standing here with Jim Inglebright. I saw him bring him into the care center. I saw him leave the care center, climb over the fence, walk through the grandstand, and now we're standing on top of the bridge overlooking the racetrack. They said you took a heck of a ride. What happened?
Well, the lap earlier, I kind of felt the car getting loose. I radioed in saying I think I got one going down, so I was getting ready to come in, and I just leaned on a little too hard coming through 5, and when I crested up over 6, I was sideways, man. I kind of gritted and went for the ride.
I love that he told me that 2 weeks later their car was fixed and they raced it again. In 2002, the Inglebrights bought some property on Walters Court and started American Auto Body Specialists. In 2021, they sold the body shop, and the following year they were awarded a cannabis dispensary license and opened up the Bright Spot. Unlike the body shop and towing company, where customers were usually not happy because they were in a wreck or they got towed, at the Bright Spot, everybody was in a great mood. While he hung up his racing cap, Inglebright still has to let the tiger out of the cage sometimes. He does so by racing go-karts with his friends on Mondays at the Sonoma Raceway Karting Center. Now, it's just not gonna make literal sense, but I'm not gonna miss the opportunity to say it anyway. Gentlemen, start your engines and welcome Jim Inglebright into the Armijo High School Hall of Fame.
First off, let's give it up for Tony and all these people that put this together for us. That is not me. That didn't happen to me, but that was somebody else. That was a hell of a day. I'll give him that. It was a lot of fun, but to get back to the Armijo High stuff, everybody has done such a great job. I was sitting there thinking, like, I'm kind of off the hip guy, so I'm like, what am I going to say? Well, I can say one thing. I was Jay Dawes' third string quarterback during my freshman year, which didn't last very long because I wasn't very good. I think I graduated high school weighing 127 pounds. So my dad seen that I wasn't going to be a team guy, basketball, football. I just wasn't really good with the ball sports. What I was good at, that we found out at a young age, was I was good on motorcycles, anything with a motor. My dad always taught me how to, you tear it up, you fix it, so I was always working on the stuff after school. Our family actually was from Mount Pleasant, Iowa. That's where I was born and raised. And my mom's older brother, Bob Bonzer, Uncle Bob, moved out here to Fairfield, and we followed him. So, Uncle Bob got kudos a little earlier, and he's getting kudos from me as well. And then my cousin, which is sitting right next to my Uncle Bob, is how I got introduced to my wife. They happen to live across the street from each other on Sycamore, and I started giving her a ride to schools, and one day this real cute girl was in the backseat of my car. So I asked her out, and here we are 40 some odd years later. So, I was a metal shop guy, so I parked as close as I could get to Mr. Tyler's class because at noon, I went to school, you know, in the morning, and in the afternoon I had work experience and I went out to my dad's place. So, you know, Val and I would go to the games on Friday nights and stuff like that, but usually my dad kept me pretty busy. I was hyper, is what they called me back then. Always doing something. So Dad got me into racing motorcycles, and Valerie would tag along with us as well. So the Armijo